Welcome to Talking Peace with the Western New York Peace Center, being recorded here at Think Twice Radio in the home of the future, also the home of our producer and friend Richard Wicca. Thanks, Richard. And thanks to our friends at WBNY, Buff State, coming out of Buff State University, Buffalo State's original alternative radio station. Thank you, Buff State. And when I think of thankfulness, I think of our dear indigenous friends and how, no matter how they've been, had attempted genocide and all kinds of being cheated and violated in all kinds of killed in so many ways, so many times and ways, they remain thankful, and they always start everything off by thanking Mother Earth, thanking for keeping us standing and giving us something to stand on, being the ground of our dwelling, and the living waters that keep us alive, Mini-Wachoni, and all of the plants, the medicinals and the nutritionals, and the creatures of all kinds, and the trees that give us the very air we breathe, and the so many beautiful, phenomenal things in our creation, including Brother Sun and Grandmother Moon, and our Creator who gave us the original instructions that we need to follow if we want life to continue in this creation and in the love that it started off with. So then when they say all of that, then they would say Nyahweh. It's like a shorthand of all of that. And then the people say Nyo. So Nyahweh.
No.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm very excited about our wonderful guests here today in studio. We have, I'll just go around. First of all, we have a young friend from long back, I'd say, Abdi Farah, who is a student at Buff State, and he's studying poli-sci, and he's joined us here now. Welcome, Abdi.
Hi. Thank you, Vicky, for letting me part of the show.
Oh, we're excited to have you on. We need the voice of the youth.
Yes.
Tell us what's happening, what you think of things happening. And, of course, friend of the show, Christian Parra. Christian has been, working locally, regionally, nationally, and just getting everything done for people's action and for the people. So, Christian, welcome.
Thank you, Vicky.
We're so appreciative of all the great work you've done, and we just need so much of it here in Buffalo and in Western New York and in the whole country. So we're very glad and grateful you're doing all of that. So we will be talking about peace action and about national base building and just base building in general, and community building, movement building, relationship building, all of that. So, but I always like us to, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Victory Ross. I am the board chair at the Western New York Peace Center. So I am not the executive director. This is her wonderful show, and we miss Deidre E. Mel. She'll be doing the show next week. But for right now, I'm just stepping in for her. The Western New York Peace Center just had its annual meeting, and we've had a lot going on, and she's, just making it all happen. So meanwhile, getting back to, we like to start off with, as we're talking about base building, what are the values that we want to bring into this and remember during this discussion? So I would just say, Christian, if you want to go first, we'll just go around like that.
Yeah, in organizing terms, one-on-ones, right, trying to figure out people's self-interest, figure out like what is, how does their story relate to systems of oppression, so that they could understand why the movement, will always continue, and we need everybody. But people carry a lot of dominant narratives that stops them from becoming powerful. They wind up having powerless behaviors. Right? Like me and Abdi was agitating someone that's a straight man that, he's openly homophobic, and having real discussions, right? And we can never build unity if we can't just let people be who they are.
Right.
And understand their oppressions. And I think there's always the process in the movement of healing and love, and also solidarity for those that don't wind up, falling into systems of oppression because they have privilege. And we can't judge them either, right? Even their worldviews. Like, there has to be a way that we shift worldview through transformation. So, like, having friends in Ellicottville and, Springville, and just thinking about all the Trump flags, what does it identify? Everybody, to me, whether, even if they're racist or if they're oppressed, there needs to be a way that we shift the narratives and also shift the worldview so that people understand that we're never going to build a power to break the system that wants us to be separated. They don't want us to be united because they understand that this is how they keep their power. So in general, for me, base building is led by people that are impacted and trying to create our own, our own base of whatever we're trying to work on. The thing is, sometimes people fall into wanting to base build when they're in need rather than base building now.
Right.
There's a delay, especially base building across the country has been a delay due to COVID, due to activists not understanding the difference between being an activist and being an organizer, right? Running around, screaming and yelling, but, don't have an agenda. There's a quote,
Right.
If you're not ready to govern, you're not ready to win. And it's going to take a lot of people to realize that even the education system has failed us to teach us about base building and leadership development in the schools so that kids even are growing up to have a different curriculum that leads them into thinking that you are as powerful as you want to be leaving school instead of, like me going to college and getting arrested and getting on bail, and next thing you know, I lose my scholarship to University of Central Florida, right? That was a lot of shame to even say I've been in jail.
Right.
But it's the movement, it's the stories that keep people united. And, I definitely, everybody knows, like, I do it for my son so that he could understand. He's one of the biggest people in my base, that have the most self-interest in. And just so you know, Vicky, I might be getting him soon, Wednesday to Saturday every week. So my thing is about to change.
Great.
So, but to me, base building is, it's all relational. It's how you treat other people. It's how you accept other people. And base building changed my life because of the one-on-ones. As somebody that, was suicidal one time in his life, the relational building really made me understand that other people go through these different types of oppression. I'm not going to say anybody's story is worse, better, or whatever it is.
No, right.
It's their story.
Right.
And I think through that type of organizing, it's easy to get people self-interested into the movement because now there's trust built, there's accountability done, and as well as agitation to help your comrades to move in a direction that they're clear-minded in the decisions that they're making for the path to their power, right? We don't want people in our base to fall into cracks. We need to keep each other accountable on how we move forward as a community, but even nationally, it's been a struggle, like organizing, right, in Southside Chicago with gangsters, like people that are, some of them did 30 years in jail, like their credibility in the community is very high, and they do everything they can to transform their lives and also the community now in a very positive way, including doing bail reform like we did, as well as parole justice like we're fighting now for with Donna Robinson.
Right.
And just thinking about the fact that people don't know how to deal with tension, right?
Right.
This work is brings a lot of tension.
Absolutely.
And if you're not ready to handle it, right? People will say narratives, but if you have a base, those narratives don't matter. You just keep base building. Don't let any of the distractions that's actually holding you back or any narrative from becoming powerful. And I do think we don't even notice as humans because there is no mental institution. There is nothing to deal with mental illness. People don't have nobody to talk to. And base building, our base counts on each other, right? There's a lot of love and real base building, in my opinion. And to me, there's a lack of the leadership development for people to have successful base building. But I'll pass it to Abdi next, so he could talk a little bit about even when he was a youth and he was accountable to one-on-ones and other things. But go ahead.
Well, no, so I was just going to ask you, and first of all, you mentioned so many values in that, that are about, not judging and about caring about people, about love, about power, and all those values that we need so much. So what would you say for values that you think of when you think of base building?
Some values I think about base building is being able to network, being able to get to know somebody, and get to know their story. So having a relationship with somebody is so important because it can either make you win or lose in life. So base building is getting to know people, and you gotta knock on 50 doors, 100 doors before you're the right person. So I just believe you gotta keep going at it and building relationships and just take it one conversation at a time, one person at a time, so you can elevate and grow, but also let other people grow with you. And you can heal people. So this work is to get healed and advocate for other people that can't advocate for themselves.
Right.
Like Christian touched upon people that are incarcerated. So there's a lot of stories where people can't express their stories. So we are the ones to be that story for them.
So I hear so many values that you're mentioning in that of one of them being patient, and just to keep on working on it, and that caring about each other and how we're all affected by each other's stories. I think of, usually I want to go when I'm thinking about values, and they really apply really any topic that we pick. And we have a lot of different topics that we've talked about on this show. But I like to think of what Dr. King said, and it was John Washington who first drew this quote to my attention. But where Dr. King said, "I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality." So that unarmed truth and unconditional love. So that truth, the truth is what's going on. So a lot of, when I've talked with, what can I say? People who have a very different idea, they've said to me they think that we have different values, and I'm like, I don't think our values are so different. I think our assessment of what's going on is so different, because a lot of people don't even know what's going on, especially if they're listening to very bad news outlets that are, there's a lot of lying. And actually, you should just see the show we just did on fascism last week, where, lying and just making things up, untruth. So truth, actual truth. And that doesn't mean truth is simple. A lot of times, you just get different pieces of the truth from different people who see different parts of it, So truth and love, and of course love, because love is what motivates an activist. That's what makes people do, because we care, because we want things to be better for people and for ourselves, as you say, self-interest. But the other one I like to say, because you asked me, we were talking about Cornel West before we started the show, beloved brother Dr. Cornel West, who is teaching at Union Theological Seminary, and he's talked about moral integrity and universal solidarity. So I think that's really important in the base building too. So that universal solidarity is very much what you were both talking about, right? And really another version of love, another way of thinking of it or describing it. But it's that same compassion and caring and working together. And the moral integrity, well, integrity is just, needed. needed, you know, that honesty, that, you know, truthfulness, that, you know, being that we do what we say, or we try to do what we believe in, which is a tall order. It's easier said than done. But anyway, so those are plenty of great values to get us going. So so Christian, I know you're going on a trip tonight, really.
Yeah.
Tonight, or it'll be tomorrow, like in the wee hours of tomorrow, and that you're doing national base building for People's Action. So why don't you tell us a little about People's Action to start with, and then a little bit about what you do for People's Action.
People's Action, we have an institution. We also have the political side of the work. So we do movement politics. We also do legislative work. We're also an institution in the sense that we are educators to the social justice movement. So we have a lot of powerful trainers nationally. And we're roughly, I want to say, been organizing in 30 plus states, around that, like 30 something states. And basically doing a lot of leadership development, winning, you know, trying to win on the presidential side, you know, trying to win Congress in many different states, U.S. Senates. And then on the legislative side, we do a lot of healthcare, climate justice, housing justice. And that's the reason why I'm going to Kansas City. There's the Homes Guarantee, people like Bahia, John Washington, Tara, that actually have been, and Grace, that have been bringing, you know, People's Action together around the Homes Guarantee, which they're teaching local organizers to either do tenant unions or to build out legislation on the municipal, county, state level, and then obviously working on the federal level. And there's been some big victories. The MAT Act that just passed around harm reduction, which People's Action was leading, and just like seeing what is possible nationally. Don't get me wrong. I saw some weaknesses where when like, for instance, Roe versus Wade, when that passed, I mean, when that was taken back, right, federally, we couldn't even act. We're not powerful enough yet. And that scared me. Like, you know, like even, you know, different laws had changed. And it's like the Supreme Court really does have a lot of power over us. And it's super scary to think about. That as a country, as people that have been oppressed, we're not powerful enough to win. It's scary. Like, not yet. You're right. Correct. Because so now So I'll speak about like some of the work I've been doing.
Sure, please.
So I've been working and building out curriculums nationally. You know, trained, you know, over 45 people in Michigan, 20 people in Chicago. Now it's even more than that, because I went down to do more training. So about another 60 people in Chicago, many people in Massachusetts, Pennsylvania.
Where in Massachusetts?
So Lynn, Springfield, Holyoke, Chicopee. I always say this one wrong. Worcester. Yeah. So, you know, and we're going to be running people for Congress next year there. People that actually, me and Abdi went to go get elected to be the first Puerto Rican Senator, Adam Gomez. And we was down there the whole day, you know, doing visibility so that we could do turnout. And we won from an incumbent that was there for 12 years.
Wow.
So, like, you know, like, nationally, like, there's obviously states that need a lot more organizing and shift of worldview. Right? You think about Kentucky, red states, North Carolina, right? It's possible. We've seen with Lucha, bomb-ass organizers like Stephanie Maldonado, who's the organizing director for Lucha. She helped turn the state blue. We won that in the last presidential race because of them knocking on 250,000 doors and registering thousands of people.
Wait, which state are you talking about?
Arizona.
That's what I thought you were talking about.
Yeah.
Arizona, right.
So, like, there's many different stories of the success of base building, but then I created a boot camp that's 14 weeks, which there's trainings, 1 to 2 every week, a lot of homework, work that organizers are supposed to be doing anyways, like one-on-ones, effective meetings, propositions. And So we had 90 people getting trained there. That to me was like, because the Street Team Academy that Abdi went through when I first started building curriculum was powerful itself. And then to like doing it nationally now.
Yeah, right.
It's
right,
like,
right.
what the hell? Like this really is happening?
Yes.
So
exciting.
I didn't think I was going to honestly do I was scared that I was not going to do a good job. I could say like I'm proud of myself for taking the risk of going nationally.
Absolutely.
Don't get me wrong, I have FOMO. Like I miss the work in Buffalo. I miss working with Free the People. You know, I miss working with pushing Latinos forward.
Right.
Things that, you know, I helped founded to this community.
Right.
But, you know, obviously staying in contact with like Korean Society of Buffalo. But taking what I've been doing nationally, and I've been thinking and working with, talking to other people about soon bringing some type of like week-long or agitational training here to Buffalo, and taking what I've been learning from the national side. But People's Action it even has a convention coming up on the last week of June where thousands of organizers across the country come together. We have like Bernie Sanders come, you know, AOC, like big legislators come, and it really is like you see all the member affiliates coming together. It's Abdi, you want to speak about like People's Actions, the convention?
Yeah, I went to People's Convention when I was, I'll say 15. I'm 19 now, so it was 4 years ago. 2018, I was 15 or 14 years old.
It was 2019.
2019. So I was 16, 15 years old at that time. But I'm going to Washington, D.C. and meeting other people and seeing other organizers, and just even I was a liaison, I believe, during one of the direct actions, but not even fully participating in, you know, in the move. I mean, in the
direct action.
Direct action, but
right.
just seeing it just opened my eyes, and I also built a lot of relationships. You know what I mean? I also built a lot of relationships with people at the People Convention, and it just opened my view and worldview, and get to know that there's more people out here that do the work. But just it was a lifetime experience. But Washington D.C. was not the only place I went to with Christian. We went to California, Boston.
I lived in Boston for like 11 years.
I'm sorry, I meant to say Springfield, Massachusetts.
Oh, Springfield.
For Adam Gomez.
Right.
Just seeing other people and seeing other states and see how they organize just helped me, and I know it definitely helped Christian. So.
But the convention is sick. It's like thousands of us, and we have targets, obviously, CEOs of these corporations that put CO2, give cancer to people, and, you know, corporations that dirty the water, that gives us... Right. The point is that with People's Action and the network, and like he said, there hasn't been one in 4 years because of COVID.
Right.
So this one is going to be grand.
It's going to be big.
Oh, it's going to be so big.
Right.
And there's thousands of people just going into a building, doing their direct action. You see hundreds of marshals around with orange jackets, the narrative, the boxing fight, the people versus the oppressor. And honestly, truth, it's a shift of worldview for transformation. And it's, oh man, it's so powerful.
So one thing, I'm glad you brought that up about worldview again. I like to go into that a little bit. And it makes me think of, there's a linguist. You know, it's funny how linguists, Noam Chomsky, who is also very well known, you know, intellectual historian, political analyst of what's going on. And, so there's another linguist called George Lakey, and he wrote a book called Don't Think About a Pink Elephant, or something like that. Don't Think About an Elephant, something like that. And it was in the Bush era, kind of, right? So that was still a very polarized, you know, we've just been on this path more and more where there's these very different worldviews And they're sort of saying it's the worldview that makes the big difference. Not so much, like I said, it was what I said before. Not really the values are so different. It's what you think is going on is so different. And also what you think is needed is so different. So the difference between one of the things that he said in the worldview, it's like either the paternalist thing that is like the benevolent dictator kind of thing that is coming out of a more well, let's say even, I don't want to use first of all, the Peace Center is a 501c3. So we don't really get into the party politics part of it.
Yeah.
But anyway, from that sort of a worldview that wants the discipline and the punishment and what I call Fear Inc. actually.
Yeah, I mean
and then the other one being the one that wants the balanced parent that is a nurturing parent that has a more nurturing and responsible worldview. So you want to talk about that a little bit?
Because it's more the narrative,
right?
Like teaching my son, who like wrote a whole article about what happened to the Capitol and how that brought fear to black people. Right? Narratives. My son, I teach him all the time, like, you got to speak up for yourself. Don't hold any narrative in your mind. You have to release it with vulnerability. Share it, exactly. Don't ever think that you're being rude with anybody if you're agitating them out of love. You're letting them know exactly how you feel without being rude. Right? And
truth.
Yeah, so
Truth.
My son, he grew up in a community, and Abdi will tell you, with Somalis, Congolese, Burmese, Karen. My son is a little, with me and you in the streets with him, right? During the Black Lives Matter marches.
Yes.
My son, he's not scared to take the mic, right? Like, to me, teaching narratives is kind of messed up. It really does put the narrative, it's like saying, and the narrative of the books that is written by the white man or white woman, or just the narrative of white supremacy, and just thinking about narratives of like Rosa Parks, she didn't want to get up, because she was tired. No, she was an activist.
Right.
Let's get the story straight. She was an activist.
Right.
The narrative is always to make the person that is oppressed to look weak. Right. And it's like, no, we are strong. Right. And we could bring ourselves to be weak because of the narratives. We're not good enough. We need the bootstrap narrative. We need, and I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, we could become powerful ourselves. We could become the next entrepreneur. We could become the next organizer. We could become the next president of the United States of America if we really do unite. Like me, I have an agenda in 9 years to continue doing base building across the country, and that's in 9 years to get an elected official that's in my mind to become the president of the United States, named Adam Gomez, who's going to be running for Congress next year. That we was with him in Massachusetts, and I told him this, like, I want to build enough national power to get the first Puerto Rican elected for president of the United States. We've been colonizers to Puerto Rico, and Puerto Ricans have given a lot to the United States. And I just feel like there's a lot of colonization that has happened that we don't talk about, to the roots of you always bringing up indigenous people. Right? There's a lot of people that are forgotten in the real narrative. Right. But in the fake narrative, we're celebrating holidays that the oppressor created. And there's like things here and there. But all I'm saying is, when it comes to the worldview, people don't look back to their history, even history that's not that far. Right. Like for instance, we think about the CRA, the Community Reinvestment Act of 1977. People of color just became homeowners just 50 years ago. It's not that long ago, right? We just started getting property, and the banks are oppressors too. They could take everything away from us in a second. And I guess what I'm saying is, like, in narrative, people watch TV. White supremacy wants you to watch TV. They want you to be sucked into the narrative. You even have, to me, in my opinion, like the cure of mental illness, is Xanax. When you deal with depression, it's the different medications that white supremacy makes profit off of, and then it gets sold in the street for people to survive just to make a paycheck and just to get some money, and then they're considered a hustler selling narcotics, and now they're in a system that white supremacy wants them to be in anyways because they make profit off of it, which is the prison system. To me, it depends what narrative are you talking about, right? Like if someone grows up in Ellicottville with the narrative of the Confederate flag being okay, right? Because it's a patriarchal, a patriot's flag or whatever.
They say the history.
Yeah. But there's so much pain behind it, right?
Right.
And if their worldview doesn't shift because they grew up in a white community, then they don't get to see, like when they go into places that are colonized or gentrified, you see everybody is white that's working in the restaurant except the busboy. You know, the people of color, Mexicans, right? Or people that are trying to survive just to get a check, and they're not getting much, right? And they're doing the bootstrap narrative, the 9 to 5, instead of actually trying to become entrepreneurs because the system is not built for them to become.
Well, this is where actually, maybe if we talk a little bit about the education, because back to the narrative, because a lot of our narratives, some of them come through society in different ways, and a big way is also through the school system. And so the school system and these books that, and the fights that are going on now, where it's about ignoring, avoiding, and even lying about what actually happened. So there have been lies, there's been huge omissions about what actually happened, and things glossed over or whitewashed, and really whitewashed in that sense of like trying to say like, oh, well, you know, just glossing over slavery, glossing over what it meant. You know, that is the phenomenon that for the creation of this country, that the two of the most heinous things that have ever happened in the world, you know, to black people and to indigenous people over the creation of this country. So that glossing over, you know, and so back to the school system is built. Actually, the school system was built in such a way that it would make for good factory workers that would be obedient and just do what they're told. So that's why all the desks are lined up, all looking at the central, you know, person, the teacher, who's going to tell you like it is. There's no, you know, communication. It's not a cooperative classroom. You're on your own. You're not supposed to talk to your other people. You know, that's the way it was set up. You know?
I mean, you even think about indigenous people, how white supremacy took their kids and put them into boarding schools.
Yes.
Putting them into uniform, changing their culture.
Right.
You know, I don't know if I've ever told you, when I went to Alaska, and I went to Bethel, which to me was like going into a portal. We went on these boats and then went into the different villages, and you see the erosion happening. And they're trying to put state of emergency because the villages are getting taken away. Homes are being taken away by the rivers that are expanding because of the drilling that they're doing over there, the oil spills. Like living in Alaska, they even pay you to live there because of all of the, you know, all of the toxins and the stuff in the air, like the water. Even the salmon count is super low because of the oil spills. But seeing it with my own eyes was crazy, and they're trying to put a state of emergency, and obviously DC is not listening to them because the fact that the drilling and oil that's coming out of there is making billions of dollars. So it's more, the profit is more important. But when you think of the narrative, or you think of our history and our native people that are still there, it can't be the truth, because if it is the truth, and this is being shown more and more, and that means we have to take action, but then white supremacy doesn't make profit. And it's true, like the narrative has to be the truth, and I don't think it's told enough, because when I went into those boarding schools, I was trying to find one math book or one English book or something, but everything had to do with Jesus Christ. And it was like, wow, they are transforming these people into Christians. And I have problems. I mean, I went to church for a very long time in my teenage years. But Christianity messes me up when you learn about slavery, when you actually see it for yourself and go into a building where they took kids away from the center of the culture of indigenous people. And the way they explained it was the kids in the middle, the grandparents in the outside telling them the stories, the mothers outside of them and the fathers outside of them doing what they need to do to bring the resources, and mothers, being home. And women in indigenous culture, the matriarchal system. Men don't talk in the meetings, women do. Even in their dance culture, men are on their knees and women are in the back dancing. Like it was something that was unbelievable. I've never seen so many indigenous people together in my life. But to hear the stories of the education system through the process of really changing the narrative at schools, if it's not the right teacher and it's not the right system, could really teach somebody a culture that is hateful, a culture that is powerless.
And I just need to say too, it's not, the difference between Jesus, Jesus' teachings and Christianity's doings are night and day, largely speaking. So, I mean, it's not that, the teachings are quite different, but then there's a lot of as you said, there's colonization, there's misrepresentation, there's showing Jesus like he looks like he's from Sweden or something. He was a Jew. He was a Jewish man. He didn't look like he came from Norway or Sweden or something, or Germany or whatever they're making him look. And also what he taught was not what is being taught. So,
well, for me, I always say, I might not go to church, but I do believe that there's a higher power. I do believe that our ancestors are with us. But I think I do God's work.
Right. I think you do
I think, organizing and
absolutely.
And in the hood, going to Richmond,
caring for people.
We was in Oakland. There was a raid right next door to us. We was in the hood, and being from the South Bronx, and then organizing in places like South Chicago, I'm going into communities that I might not walk out of. That's the risk that I'm taking.
Right.
And it's because it is in my self-interest to build a power that doesn't exist.
Well, that's part of it. And then...
Yes, the love.
It's the love. Yes, exactly. It's that love. And that's what motivates. That's what motivates to make those changes. So it's in our self-interest to care for each other because we're all connected. So it sounds... So now are you going with Christian tomorrow?
Oh, to Kansas City? No.
No. And so now when you... No, not at the last minute, right?
No. I mean, if he wants to jump on the plane, put him in the suitcase.
So now what do you think about some of those trips? You said you've been to California and Springfield.
Springfield, Massachusetts, Washington, Albany, the capital state of New York.
And so what did you think? What was it like? Say, what was it like when you went to California? Where'd you go and what were you busy with? What were you busy doing?
California, we went to an organization called, what was it?
Well, a lot of them. Yeah, it was MG, Movement Generation, Rich City Rides, Urban Tilt.
And what city or cities?
Oakland
and Richmond.
Oh, really?
Oakland and Richmond, but we were just we were training other organizers on how to team build and how to get your story out there. And we was doing the one exercise where you draw a stick figure and you put who you were and then who you're gonna become. And we were just facilitating that meeting, and Christian was facilitating in Kauai, and so much other friends that were facilitating this.
Kauai was there too?
Yeah, Kauai.
Kauai led the big piece of the training.
Yeah. Oh, really? Wow. Well, I wanted to say this about narrative when you were talking about narratives. First of all, we know that people learn through storytelling. It's traditional. It's elemental. It's so deep and so related to us, you know, all our cultures.
If the person is vulnerable and authentic, you know, you could tend to get a liar. I'm not going to put Abdi and put you on blast a little bit, right? But like Abdi lied to me when he was like 13. I mean, you would expect a 13-year-old not being perfect. And he saw how serious I did take the work. And one day we're driving in the car and he's like, I've been lying to you about stuff. And honestly, I don't want to lie to you no more. I want to tell you the truth. So then he got deeper in his story.
Right.
And it's like, got him to tears, got him to the point of like, sentimental, right?
Sure.
And like we could talk about toxic masculinity. We could talk about the narratives that people could put on us. But that's the transformation that I've always put into the youth. You know, I trained over 200 youth through my, 5-6 day training that they all went through. And it was what was it, like from 10 to 5 every time, right?
Yeah, 10 to 5, yeah.
So, you know, I need to tell you, I also was a big liar as a teenager. And I mean, oh, my poor parents, my uncle, I won't even get started. In fact, I lived in California because my uncle wanted to show that he could do a better job than my parents could. In the end, he sent me back. But anyway, I wanted to say, as a social worker, which I am a qualified clinical social worker, I used to be a mobile therapist. But anyway, that there's something called narrative therapy, and it's all about telling and finding and really making your story, just what you're talking about, where our narrative for our own life, you know, like how did we manage, you know, when we deal with trauma or having traumatized parents, or, you know, the shame-based society that we live in, or all the oppression that we live with, or all the different hurtful things that we might live with. How did we manage to keep going, and how do we keep learning and growing from that? So that's narrative, and that's narrative therapy. So that's, and also it is part of brief treatment. Right, so it's not meant to go on forever.
Like even
it's a quick. It's like reframing a thing in a whole different way.
But it's reframing yourself.
Exactly.
Like for instance, when I was transformed, I carried a lot of toxic masculinity that I didn't know about. I carried pride. Right. There was a shell that you don't. Right. There's certain things you don't talk about. Right. And it's like, who made that narrative that you can't talk about things that hurt you?
Right.
You know, like, I think, honestly, it is therapeutic, not just to tell your story to anybody, but if you connect with somebody.
Yes.
I think that there is some type of privilege that you have somebody in front of you that is really taking it to their heart.
Right.
You know, and you're building something tight. Like, there's certain people that I've had one-on-ones with that they shared their story with me, and it stays in my heart. I never tell their story again.
Right.
And I've reflected on their stories. And when I see them, I see strong people. I might even see privileged people that are strong as well, right? But, yeah, because I could say through narrative, I have at least in Buffalo alone over 800 one-on-ones that's in my head. You know, like I easily when I was organizing at Push and Citizen Action, like my goal was to have at minimum 10 one-on-ones a week. Even till this day, my priority is one-on-ones, right, across the country. If you're not building, if you're not learning about people, that means you don't really want to even learn about yourself, explore yourself.
Well, it's that building relationship. You know, and it's back to truth and love, you know, telling your truth and then, you know, really connecting at a deep level. And that is love. You know, that's what, you know, that's what animates. Actually, when I was doing the Gnonio, you know, at the end piece of it, you know, in the creator, from the creator or in the creation, you know, makes me think of that song. You don't probably know this song. Love makes the world go round.
I mean, I know the song.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Anyway, and it does, you know, so, but the truth piece is just as critical. That's just as critical, because that's the part where people want to gloss over or ignore things, or even tell a lie tell a story that's a lie. Well, first of all, I got to say, when I say a lie. Now, first of all, it was true that I was a big liar as a teenager, which is, it worked at which is like the antidote. When you finally stop lying, it feels so good you really don't want to lie anymore.
This is true.
But the thing about truth, somebody said, one social worker actually said to me, everybody has at least 2% of truth that they're telling. Even if what they're telling is largely not true, there's a little grain of a germ of something in there.
Like me, when I tell a story, right? Sometimes I might exaggerate a little bit to make the story better in a funny way. So like, you got to have fun with narrative too, right?
Sure.
So that people can laugh.
Right. You need to laugh.
And it depends if you're a comedian, I try to be funny. I'm not that funny, but I try to be funny. No. But it's one step at a time, and especially in growth and telling your story. Like there's people like, Tyrell Ford, who got the Freedom Fighter Award at the Free the People Award ceremony. He was an introvert. He didn't want to tell a story, right? Started telling his story. Now he's working on different bills. He's in Albany.
Right.
He's the lead organizer for Voice Buffalo. And I just think about like, the leadership development that the community has poured into him just for getting involved, telling your story. You wind up building a community that you didn't even know you had, which is pretty dope.
Well, this is where I want to now. Actually, we've only got about 10 minutes left. So like
what's your question? So
I want to go into the question of how we can, what can we do in Buffalo, and via the Western New York Peace Center and or. All of these, Free the People, all these coalitions that we're building. We're part of Free the People, which, we're very grateful. And LaDeja Williams is our representative on that group right now.
Good.
So, but to talk about, Buffalo, because, here's what I've seen. I felt like there was a time when, for a while there, for about, I don't know, at least 5 years or more, where when people heard that we were from Buffalo, when I, went to any other kind of a conference or any, activist gathering, a march or something, or webinar, seminar, whatever it is, people would say, wow, things are, you all are really rocking it in Buffalo. It's all happening. And I felt like, yeah, it is. We had 5,000 people out to one of the women's marches, 4,000 the previous year. We had lots of things going on. And I mean, I could name you, Free the People being one of them. Lots of different ways. The number of people out in the streets, even with Occupy, that we had Occupy, our Occupy was up for one of the longest in the country. So everyone thought, well, it's all happening. And then look at what we've had in the past year and what we're dealing with right now. So I want to add that into the equation and say, where do we go from here? How do we need to proceed for both of you?
Chris, you want to go first?
There's people doing the work, right? I think about, and I'll talk about issue-based, so I don't go into the C4 side of work.
Right.
But just thinking legislatively, Buffalo has been filling up buses going to Albany. There's a lot of people doing amazing work, Denise Walden and just thinking about my partner, Gio Vida Hernandez.
Yes.
There's a lot of amazing women doing the work. Deidre. And like give them, Deidre, everybody, right? There's a lot of women of color leading the work.
Yes, Tombier.
Yeah, so I just think about like, legislatively we are powerful. And I don't think we're powerful enough to get everything, but we're powerful enough that every single legislator knows who we are, right? If you mention anybody from like Free the People, who's now just not only working on mass incarceration, they're working on housing, climate, right? They absolutely is many different organizations. I would say for people to figure out like what organization works for them, or even building out your own committee, your own organization, if you have to. But there is a strength that is needed for accountability around the work of those decision makers that stay in power. And it's not a threat or anything or trying to get into political work because I don't want to do that on this call. But to me, there isn't a 501c4 to answer the questions of how much power we have.
You mean in Buffalo?
In Buffalo. Right? There's some that have been around for years that have been organizing because legislatively on the municipal level, city level, we should have better police reform. Having a black mayor.
You're not kidding.
They use
painful
in the political field. They use fear mongering too much. We saw it with the bail rollbacks when I wanted to go crazy in the room, and you was like, "Christian, calm down." And I was
thinking about.
I was actually talking about that today. I wish we would have turned up because all the news stations was there. We probably would have got arrested because there was so many cops.
This is when are you talking about?
This is when we were doing the bail rollbacks. I was with Citizen Action at the time, and we went into the room where there was a whole bunch of Republicans, the sheriffs.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
So
yes, the bail reform.
It was the bail rollbacks. We passed the bail reform already.
The bail reform
rollbacks.
Rollbacks, right.
So I just think legislatively there is a lot of strength and a lot of powerful women doing the work. And I think as men, we need to get more involved in letting the women lead as well. I think that their intention is mothers. Their intention is to, be as powerful as they can be in the public arena. And we need to support that.
Right.
And I also think the youth have to step up.
Oh, yeah.
The youth need to start organizing other youth so that they're the future politicians. They're the next organizers, the next executive directors, the next board members. And to understand the nonprofit industrial complex is not all the solution. There's the activists like Carrie O'Horn, Miles Carter, and other people that are, making sure that they can do what they can for the best of the oppressed. But I'll pass it to Abdi because there's not a lot of time because I could talk forever. So
Well, here, Abdi, what are you thinking of that we need to do? What do you see as things we can do?
I think the most important thing that we touched upon, the first thing was base building. Getting to know your community, getting to know your mayor, getting to know, building relationships with not only with family members, but building relationships with politicians, developers, people that have impact in this community. So having base building is one of the most important things in organizing, but on that national level or even local level, getting to know people's stories. Not only base building will make Buffalo a much better city for organizing, but also putting stories out there, being more socially aware on social media. Because as a youth, I'm not really that much on social media, but social media is one of the biggest avenues where you could really make something out of yourself, even an organization or people, youth. So much outlets in social media, but being part of social media would also make Buffalo go up and uprise when it comes to organizing. And also another thing is educating. Being educated is one of the most important things in communities. So educating youth, educating even elders, nobody's too old to be organized. There's no such thing as that. It's no age limit. As long as, truth and love, if you have those qualities, you could definitely educate. And, having a mentor as a Christian was, so valuable to me as a young age, Even at Buffalo State, there was a question like, who's your mentor? And I wrote a piece about Christian. So so having a mentor and having somebody in the community is so important, which comes from base building, social media, even seeing Christian on social media is always out in other cities, and I'm like, okay, I see him. He said this is not work to him. This is a lifestyle. So So people,
that's what happened.
So people have to really understand. It's not, you're not here to get an opportunity. You're here to make an opportunity out of yourself. You're here to use you know, it might sound really wrong when I say you're here to use people, you're here to use organizations, not only for your growth, but for other people's growth. So, like Christian always told us, you know, organization we work for, he said, use this organization to make yourself. Don't let the organization use you. So, those words still carry on this day, and I also use those in other practices in my life. So, I'm going to give the mic to you.
Well, they are tools. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you for all of that. And as you're saying, and I'm just thinking, as you say, we're never too old for learning, and we're also never, you know, we never stop learning, you know, and we need, and especially when we have that awareness, that humility to be learning, you know, because there's always more to learn. You know, there's always more to learn, and there's always more to do. But, you know, what encourages me sometimes, that change can be very quick. You know, when we think that things can't happen, and then all of a sudden they do. You know, so I know this community is hurting right now. We have it's been such a painful couple of years now that has really wrung people out. But one of the things, and we'll talk more about embracing Buffalo, that's something that we have going on. And meanwhile, there's just so many different ways that we can work together. But those frank conversations, I loved what you said, and it made me think of some of those frank conversations that have to be had for those relationships to flourish, because back to the truth has to be out there and it has to be discussed.
Yes, and I just want to say, like, it has to be authentic.
Right.
Just straight up authentic.
Right.
If you hold back from telling your friend something that you really want to tell them, and it's just holding back, even if it's your enemy,
right,
and you don't even tell them at least how you felt, like the restorativeness inside of you being liberated and telling somebody how you feel, with agitation, without even being rude, just letting them know exactly how you feel.
Right.
You know, it's almost like, once again, don't hide yourself in a shell. Like, be fucking, excuse my language.
Oops.
Be fact.
Right. They say, don't hide your light under a bushel. Right. And back to truth and love. You brought us full. And in fact, I want to say, I could not thank you enough for coming out here, for both of you, for all the work that you do, for coming on the show, and for just being such great allies and partners.
Yeah.
So
I had to squeeze this.
I can't. I know. We lucked out to get you and to get you both. It was a special treat that you brought Abdi too.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you so much. So this is Talking Peace, and together we've been talking peace in truth and love.